Picture a village before sunrise, somewhere in Western Europe during the later Middle Ages. The season is early autumn. A thin gray light rests over fields that must be harvested before the weather turns. Inside one small house, a woman is already awake. She checks the embers in the hearth, listens for a child coughing in the dark, and calculates whether the remaining grain will last until the next market day. She has not consulted a clock, a ledger, or a written schedule. The house itself has told her what time it is. The fire is low. The animals are restless. The bread dough is ready. Work has begun. It is tempting to describe this woman as exceptionally tough. That would miss the point. She is not a legendary warrior, a queen, or a saint. She is an ordinary person, living in a world where ordinary life requires an exhausting range of skills. She knows how to preserve food, mend cloth, recognize a sick animal, bargain at a market, soothe a frightened child, and judge whether a storm will damage the roof. None of these abilities makes her unusual among her neighbors. They make her useful, and usefulness is one of the most important measures of adulthood in her society. Yet even this scene needs a warning. There was no single medieval woman. A shepherd's wife in the Welsh uplands did not live like a silk worker in Lucca. A Jewish moneylender's widow in northern France faced different laws from a Christian peasant in Castile. A merchant's daughter in London, a nun in Saxony, an enslaved woman in the Mediterranean, and a queen governing during her husband's absence all belonged to the medieval world. But their choices, burdens, and opportunities could be radically different. The Middle Ages lasted for centuries and covered societies with different languages, customs, legal systems, economies, and religions. Any sentence beginning with the words "medieval women always did this" should immediately make us suspicious. What can be said is that women's work was everywhere, even when official records barely noticed it. Medieval documents were usually written by educated men for institutions run largely by men. Tax rolls listed property holders, guild rules named masters, chronicles celebrated battles, bishops, and kings. Everyday labor often appeared only when something went wrong, when a debt was disputed, when a widow went to court, when a servant was accused of leaving employment, or when an estate account recorded payment for spinning, brewing, harvesting, nursing, or carrying goods. The silence of the sources can create an illusion of inactivity. In reality, the archive often ignores work precisely because everyone assumed it would continue. A girl's preparation for that work began early. Childhood certainly existed in medieval Europe. Parents loved children, worried about them, played with them, mourned them, and made special clothing and toys for them. But childhood did not mean freedom from responsibility. A small child might gather kindling, chase birds from grain, watch younger siblings, carry messages, pick herbs, or help feed poultry. The tasks grew with the body. By adolescence, many girls could perform work essential to a household's survival. Learning rarely happened through formal lessons. A mother did not announce that the morning would contain a course on dairy management, followed by an examination in winter storage. A daughter watched. She carried a pail. She learned how warm milk should feel, how cream separated, how butter changed beneath the churn, and how cheese smelled when it was safe. She made mistakes in small quantities before anyone trusted her with large ones. Knowledge passed through hands, eyes, and repetition. It was education without a classroom and expertise without a certificate. The same was true of cooking. A recipe was not a precise list of ounces and minutes. It was an understanding of texture, heat, scarcity, and season. Grain differed from one harvest to the next. Firewood burned unevenly. A pot hung higher or lower over the hearth. The cook needed to know when a pottage was thick enough, whether dried peas required more soaking, and how much salt could be spared. She also needed to plan beyond the meal in front of her. Using too much flour today might mean less bread next week. Slaughtering an animal provided meat but removed milk, wool, offspring, or labor from the future. Every dinner was connected to an economy. This is why the household should not be imagined as a place separate from work. For most medieval families, The household was the workplace. Food was processed there. Cloth was produced there. Goods were stored there. Apprentices, servants, relatives, and paying lodgers might sleep there. Customers could arrive at the door. Animals occupied nearby spaces, and sometimes the same building. The boundary between domestic life and economic production was thin because the two were often the same thing. Women participated in nearly every stage of food production. In rural communities, they weeded, gleaned, harvested, tended gardens, cared for poultry, milked animals, made butter and cheese, dried fruit, salted meat, brewed ale, and managed stores. Some jobs were divided by gender, but the division was never as tidy as a modern diagram. During harvest, everyone who could work was needed. When a husband was sick, absent, dead, or employed elsewhere, his wife did not wait for the categories to become convenient. The crops continued growing with complete indifference to social theory. Water alone could consume a significant part of the day. It had to be fetched for drinking, cooking, washing, brewing, animals, and some crafts. A nearby well reduced the burden. A distant spring multiplied it. The weight did not arrive once. It returned in bucket after bucket. Historians sometimes estimate labor by wages, but unpaid household work leaves little numerical trace. The body kept the account instead, in worn joints, rough hands, and time that belonged to necessity. Then there was fuel. A fire provided heat, light, and cooking, yet fuel could be expensive or legally restricted. Families gathered fallen wood where custom allowed, cut peat in some regions, burned brush, straw, or dried dung in others, and purchased charcoal for particular crafts. Keeping a fire alive required attention. Letting it die meant relighting it with flint, steel, tinder, and patience. The hearth was comforting, dangerous, smoky, and indispensable. A woman tending it was not performing a symbolic domestic ritual. She was operating the central technology of the home. Bread demanded an entire chain of labor. Grain had to be grown, harvested, threshed, winnowed, stored, carried to a mill, ground, mixed, fermented, shaped, and baked. In many places, lords controlled mills and ovens and charged fees for their use. In others, households baked at home or shared communal facilities. Women kneaded dough, managed starters, shaped loaves, and judged heat without a thermometer. A badly managed batch did not merely disappoint, it wasted scarce grain. Ale was equally important in many northern regions, and household brewing was frequently women's work. The process required malted grain, water, heat, vessels, and careful timing. A successful brewer could sell surplus to neighbors or at market. The word alewife eventually carried comic and sometimes insulting associations, but those jokes rested on a serious economic reality. Women produced a widely consumed commodity. Local authorities regulated price, measure, and quality because bad ale meant angry customers and wasted grain. A woman who brewed regularly needed technical skill and a reputation for honesty. A suspiciously shallow cup could become a legal matter. Brewing also reminds us to avoid another easy myth. Medieval people did not drink alcohol because all water was poisonous. Communities used wells, springs, rivers, rainwater, and conduits, and they understood that some sources were cleaner than others. Ale offered calories, flavor, and social value. And brewing could reduce some risks, but it did not replace water everywhere. Women who fetched water often possessed detailed knowledge about which source was dependable, which became muddy after rain, and which should be avoided near animals or waste. Practical observation existed even when germ theory did not. Textiles required an even greater investment of time. Before a garment could be sewn, fiber had to become thread. Wool needed sorting, cleaning, carding, or combing, spinning, weaving, fulling, dyeing, cutting, and stitching. Linen began with flax that had to be harvested, retted, dried, broken, scutched, hackled, spun, and woven. Each stage demanded skill. The familiar image of a woman holding a distaff is not merely decorative. Spinning was so constant that it became one of the strongest symbols of female labor across medieval Europe. Spinning could be done while supervising children, watching animals, talking with neighbors, or waiting for a pot to boil. That flexibility made it easy for male writers to underestimate. A task performed between other tasks can appear secondary, even when it consumes thousands of hours. A household needed thread for shirts, shifts, hose, veils, blankets, sacks, ties, and repairs. Cloth was valuable. Garments were altered, handed down, patched, turned inside out, and cut into smaller items when they could no longer serve their original purpose. A woman who could repair fabric extended the useful life of stored wealth. Laundry was not a casual weekly chore. It required water, fuel, soap, or alkaline substances, space, and physical effort. Linen worn against the skin could be washed more often than heavy outer wool. Stains were treated with combinations of soap, ash, urine, herbs, sunlight, and repeated beating or rubbing, depending on place and period. The work could be communal, especially near rivers or washing places. It was also exhausting. The clean, white linen visible in paintings did not remain white through optimism. The woman in our imagined village has now been awake for several hours, but the sun has barely cleared the horizon. She has checked the fire, prepared food, released poultry, carried water, and assigned tasks to older children. She may soon join work in the fields. Before following her, however, it is worth asking what she actually owns. The answer depends heavily on law, custom, and status. Some women held land. Some inherited movable goods, but not estates. Some controlled dowries, dower rights, wages, or business property. Some lived under legal systems that placed much of a married woman's property under her husband's authority. Others retained important claims through family arrangements and local custom. A widow might gain greater legal independence than she possessed while married. A single woman in a town might contract, sue, borrow, or trade in her own name. A serf's obligations differed from those of a free tenant. Medieval law was not one cage built to a single design. It was a crowded landscape of overlapping restrictions and opportunities. That complexity matters because the most dramatic claims are often the least accurate. It is wrong to say that every married woman was simply her husband's property. It is equally wrong to pretend that legal inequality did not exist. Husbands generally held formal authority in Christian teaching and in many legal traditions. Women often faced disadvantages in inheritance, office holding, testimony, mobility, and control of resources. Violence within marriage could be tolerated to degrees that are horrifying today. Yet women also used courts, kinship networks, contracts, custom, and reputation to defend claims. Their agency was real, but it operated within unequal structures. A peasant woman's relation to land could shape her entire life. Land provided grain, pasture, fuel rights, and social standing. Marriage might combine holdings. Widowhood might determine whether she could remain in the family home. Daughters could inherit in some communities, especially when there were no sons, while other customs divided property differently. Manorial court rolls from England. Record women surrendering land, inheriting tenancies, paying fines, and appearing in disputes. These documents do not reveal freedom in a modern sense. They reveal participation. Work in the fields was seasonal and relentless. Spring brought planting, repairing boundaries, caring for newborn animals, and preparing gardens. Summer brought weeding, haymaking, dairying, and long daylight hours. Harvest pulled entire communities into grain fields. Women cut crops in some places, bound sheaves in others, carried, gathered, gleaned, and processed what came home. Gleaning, the collection of grain left after reaping, could be vital to poor households and was often associated with women, children, the elderly, and those with limited land. Autumn demanded threshing, fruit collection, slaughtering, salting, brewing, and storage. Winter reduced some outdoor work, but expanded spinning, mending, food preparation, care of animals, and maintenance. The idea of a slow agricultural winter is misleading. Cold simply moved labor closer to the fire. Rural women also earned wages. Surviving accounts list payment for weeding, haymaking, harvesting, carrying, dairy work, and other tasks. Women's wages were frequently lower than men's, even for similar work. Employers justified differences through assumptions about strength, skill, and status, while the lower rate itself reinforced dependence. After the Black Death created labor shortages, workers in many regions could demand better terms, but authorities attempted to control wages and movement. Women participated in this changing labor market, though not always on equal footing. The pandemic also changed households. The plague killed on a scale that disrupted inheritance, marriage, service, and employment. Survivors sometimes gained access to land, wages, or opportunities previously unavailable. Widows inherited workshops. Servants moved toward better positions. Landlords searched for tenants. Yet, opportunity arrived through catastrophe and could be followed by attempts to restore older hierarchies. History rarely offers progress without resistance. A rural household did not survive alone. Neighbors exchanged labor during harvest, shared tools, witnessed agreements, helped during childbirth, attended funerals, and spread information with impressive speed. Women met at wells, markets, churches, ovens, fields, and spinning gatherings. These networks could offer support, but they could also enforce conformity. A good reputation might bring credit, assistance, and favorable marriage prospects. A damaged one could isolate a family. Gossip therefore mattered. Medieval moralists frequently condemned it, especially when associated with women. But gossip was not merely idle speech. It was a system for circulating warnings, judging behavior, identifying danger, and enforcing local expectations. The same network that mocked a neighbor could alert others that a trader used false measures or that a household needed help. Information had social power, and women were often central to its movement. The church stood within these networks. Parish worship structured the week and marked the stages of life. Women attended Mass, participated in processions, joined religious fraternities, donated candles, cared for altars, sponsored prayers, and shaped household devotion. Christianity taught female submission, praised virginity, and frequently treated women's bodies as morally dangerous. It also offered women powerful sacred models, from the Virgin Mary to female martyrs, abbesses, mystics, and local saints. Medieval religion restricted and elevated women at the same time, sometimes in the same sermon. For the woman in our village, faith is not a separate Sunday activity. It shapes the calendar, language, marriage, childbirth, food, death, and hope. She knows feast days and fasting seasons. She may pray for safe delivery, a child's recovery, a good harvest, or the soul of a dead relative. She may own a small devotional object or know prayers by memory, even if she cannot read. Religious life gives meaning to suffering, but it also exposes her to clerical authority. Comfort and control are intertwined. By midday, the household and fields have already required a dozen kinds of expertise. None of this means medieval women possessed secret superhuman strength. They became skilled because they practiced, because families taught them, and because failure carried consequences. Their world did not ask whether they felt ready. It placed the bucket, spindle, account, sick child, market basket, or tenancy in front of them and expected an answer. The countryside was only part of the medieval world. From the 11th century onward, towns expanded across much of Europe. Markets grew, crafts specialized, trade routes thickened, and more young people left home to work as servants or apprentices. For women, urban life could offer wages, mobility, and contact with a larger economy. It could also bring overcrowding, exploitation, and regulation designed by men who depended on women's labor while worrying about their independence. A young woman arriving in a town might enter domestic service. Service was not always a permanent social identity. For many, it was a stage between childhood and marriage. She lived in another household, worked for food, lodging, and wages, and learned skills she might later use in a home or business of her own. The arrangement could provide opportunity, but it placed her under the authority of an employer, and often far from family protection. Her day might begin in a merchant's kitchen, a craft workshop, an inn, or a noble household. She carried water, cleaned rooms, prepared fires, washed linen, purchased food, cared for children, assisted with production, and answered doors. In wealthier homes, servants formed a hierarchy. A senior woman might supervise younger workers, keep keys, manage stores, and coordinate meals. In poorer homes, one servant did everything and discovered that job descriptions were a luxury for future centuries. Movement into service reveals an important truth about medieval women. Many traveled. They moved for marriage, work, pilgrimage, trade, religious life, family duty, or displacement. The image of every woman spending her whole life in one village is too simple. Some remained close to home. Others crossed counties, seas, and political borders. Merchants' wives accompanied or managed trade. Pilgrims walked long routes to shrines. Noble brides traveled to foreign courts. Enslaved women were moved by force through Mediterranean and Eastern European markets. Mobility could mean choice, necessity, danger, or all three. Inside the town, women worked in food trades because food had to be produced and sold daily. They baked, brewed, sold fish, poultry, vegetables, dairy products, cooked dishes, pies, candles, and small goods. They kept inns, rented rooms, washed clothing, carried water, spun thread, sewed garments, and sold used items. Many occupations were extensions of household skills, but once those skills generated income, authorities began counting, taxing, and regulating them. The market was noisy, competitive, and personal. A seller needed reliable suppliers, accurate measures, and regular customers. Reputation mattered. If a woman sold underweight loaves or sour ale, neighbors could complain to officials. If she offered fair prices and dependable quality, customers returned. Credit was common because coin was not always available at the moment of purchase. A seller might extend trust to a neighbor until harvest or payday. That trust connected commerce to community memory. Women also worked in textiles at every level. They spun for their own households, for merchants who supplied raw material, or for urban industries. They wove in some regions, finished cloth, embroidered luxury items, made caps, veils, belts, purses, and clothing, and sold second-hand garments. The textile economy was one of the largest employers in medieval Europe, and female labor ran through it from raw fiber to finished cloth. Guilds complicate the picture. A guild regulated training, quality, prices, membership, charity, and access to a trade. Some admitted women directly, others recognized them as wives, daughters, or widows of male masters. Still others excluded them formally while depending on labor performed inside masters' households. A rulebook might describe a craft as male, even while women completed essential stages of production. Wives frequently worked beside husbands without appearing as separate employees. A baker's wife helped prepare dough, manage sales, purchase fuel, supervise servants, and keep accounts. A metalworker's wife might negotiate with customers and sell goods while production occurred in the workshop. A merchant's wife could correspond with agents, collect debts, and continue business during her husband's absence. The household enterprise used family labor because wages paid to outsiders reduced profit. This arrangement created both power and invisibility. A wife could possess deep knowledge of the business and influence major decisions. Yet, official membership, legal liability, or public credit might remain in her husband's name. When he died, the widow's competence suddenly became visible because the business still needed a manager. Many guilds allowed widows to continue a workshop, sometimes only until remarriage, sometimes under restrictions, and sometimes with considerable freedom. A widow who kept a bakery open did not learn the trade at the funeral. She had probably been working in it for years. Death changed the paperwork more quickly than the skill. This is one reason widowhood could be a turning point. It brought grief and economic risk, but it might also give a woman legal independence, control of property, and authority over a business she already understood. Widows appear frequently in urban records because they signed leases, sued debtors, hired apprentices, sold goods, and made wills. Some were wealthy, Many were not. A poor widow with children could face severe hardship, especially if rent or debts consumed what remained. Charity institutions, guild fraternities, relatives and neighbors sometimes helped. Assistance was uneven, and poverty could narrow choices rapidly. Single women also mattered to town economies. They worked for wages, rented rooms, traded, and sometimes maintained independent households. Legal terminology in parts of England distinguished an unmarried woman acting in her own right from a married woman whose legal identity was more entangled with her husband's. Local customs could allow married traders to operate with unusual independence, especially when business needs made strict rules inconvenient. Medieval law was often most flexible where money demanded flexibility. Not all urban work was respected. Domestic servants were vulnerable to abuse. Women in low-paid trades faced accusations of dishonesty or sexual misconduct. Authorities regulated where they could sell, what they could wear, and how they behaved in public. Women who sold food or drink were frequent targets of satire, perhaps because they occupied visible spaces and handled cash. The loud, deceitful alewife became a comic stereotype. Behind the stereotype stood a real woman trying to earn income in a crowded market. Prostitution existed in medieval towns and was regulated differently from place to place. Some authorities tolerated licensed brothels while condemning the women who worked in them. Others attempted expulsions or restrictions. Economic pressure, trafficking, war, migration, and abuse shaped the trade. It would be misleading to treat all women involved as choosing freely, just as it would be misleading to deny that some negotiated within the limited options available. The sources are often moralizing and rarely preserve their own voices. The town also offered education in unexpected forms. A merchant's daughter might learn reading and calculation because the business required them. A craftswoman learned measurements, quality standards, and prices. A servant learned the management of a larger household. A woman who appeared in court learned legal procedure. Literacy was uneven, but practical numeracy and documentary awareness spread wherever trade depended on records. Some women could read but not write. Some read in the vernacular but not Latin. Some dictated letters or accounts to clerks. Literacy should not be treated as a simple switch that was either on or off. A woman might recognize prayers, names, numbers, and business marks without composing a book. Another might copy manuscripts in a convent. A third might own a devotional text and read it aloud to others. Skill existed on a spectrum. In the later Middle Ages, books made for laywomen became more common among the wealthy. Books of hours guided private devotion through prayers arranged around the day. They were beautiful objects, but also used ones. Owners marked pages, added family notes, and carried them through life. A noblewoman's book might preserve births, deaths, and marriages alongside sacred images. The personal and religious occupied the same pages. Marriage stood at the center of most women's expected life course, but expectation was not certainty. Some never married. Some entered religious communities. Some married more than once. Some formed unions that families contested. Some were separated by war, migration, abandonment, or death. The meaning of marriage also varied by class. For a dynasty, it could rearrange political alliances. For a tenant family, it could combine land and labor. For an artisan, it could unite two sets of commercial skills. Church law emphasized the consent of the couple. In principle, a valid Christian marriage depended on the free exchange of consent, not merely on parental agreement. The minimum ages recognized in canon law were strikingly young by modern standards, commonly 12 for girls and 14 for boys. But a legal minimum is not an average. In many parts of northwestern Europe, ordinary women often married in their late teens or 20s after service, or when a household could be supported. Elite marriages could occur earlier for political reasons, and customs differed across southern and eastern regions. The distinction matters because popular history often turns the youngest permitted age into the normal age. A 12-year-old could legally consent under church rules, but that does not mean every girl married at 12 or gave birth at 14. Marriage required resources. A couple needed land, tools, work, a place to live, family support, or prospects. Poor timing could create another household with no way to survive. Families therefore negotiated. They considered property, dowry, dower, reputation, kinship, occupation, and alliances. A dowry generally moved resources with the bride into the marriage, though its form and control varied. Dower or similar arrangements could provide for a wife if she became a widow. Marriage contracts attempted to plan for a future that remained uncertain. They were emotional documents only by accident. Their main language was land, money, goods, and obligation. Yet affection was not absent. Letters, poetry, court cases, wills, and household records reveal attachment, desire, jealousy, cooperation, and grief. Arranged marriage did not automatically mean loveless marriage, just as personal choice did not guarantee happiness. Couples could grow into partnership. They could also experience conflict, abandonment, and violence. Medieval people understood that marriage joined both bodies and economies, and either could become difficult. Courtship often occurred under observation. Young people met during work, festivals, church gatherings, service, markets, and neighborhood life. A private romance in a small community was private for approximately the time required for one neighbor to reach another doorway. Songs and literature celebrated secret love, but real secrecy was hard to maintain when families shared space and everyone used the same well. Consent created legal possibilities that families found alarming. A couple could exchange words of marriage without a grand ceremony, and disputes later emerged over whether binding consent had been given. Church courts heard cases involving promises, coercion, consummation, abandonment, and competing claims. Witnesses repeated intimate phrases in formal settings. The history of marriage survives partly because relationships became arguments. A wife entered a household that might include parents, siblings, servants, apprentices, and children from earlier marriages. She did not simply marry one person. She joined an economic and emotional network. Her relationship with a mother-in-law could be supportive, competitive, or both. An experienced older woman might teach local methods and protect a new bride. She might also control keys, stores, and authority with no intention of surrendering them quickly. Household authority was negotiated through work. The person who knew where supplies were kept, which debts were due, and how tasks should be organized possessed practical power. Formal teaching instructed wives to obey husbands, but daily life required conversation and compromise. A husband who ignored the person managing food stores did so at the risk of meeting February with confidence and no cheese. This does not mean the household was equal. Patriarchal law and custom gave men advantages. A husband could control movement, property, and labor. Social tolerance for domestic discipline exposed women to violence. Legal remedies were limited and depended on evidence, status, and local authorities. Some communities intervened when abuse became excessive, but the definition of excessive was shaped by standards far more permissive than those of today. Women resisted in the ways available to them. They sought help from kin, neighbors, clergy, manorial courts, or church courts. They separated informally. They protected goods. They used public reputation against abusive husbands. Some petitions describe fear with painful clarity. Others reveal that authorities treated family peace as more important than a woman's safety. Agency did not cancel vulnerability. Sexual violence is even harder to recover. Laws existed against rape, but prosecution was difficult. Victims faced pressure to report quickly, demonstrate resistance, produce witnesses, and defend their reputations. Elite politics could shape outcomes. Servants, poor women, migrants, and women outside family protection were especially vulnerable. Records capture only a fraction of what occurred, and their silence should never be mistaken for safety. Within marriage, church teaching recognized a mutual sexual obligation in theory. This could give wives grounds to complain about abandonment or a husband's refusal. An unusual area, where canon law spoke of reciprocal rights. In practice, unequal power remained. Medieval institutions could state a principle more generous than the world they administered. Pregnancy followed marriage for many women, but fertility varied. Miscarriage, infertility, infant death, illness, separation, and deliberate periods of abstinence all shaped family size. The familiar image of every medieval wife producing a child each year is unrealistic. Pregnancy and nursing affected cycles. Fasting and poor nutrition affected health. Husbands traveled. Some couples had many children, others few, and many lost children before adulthood. The household needed children, but children were not merely labor units. Parents named them, baptized them, chose godparents, gave gifts, worried during illness, and remembered the dead. Wills revealed tenderness in the distribution of small objects. Grief appears in prayers and memorials. High mortality made loss familiar, not painless. A woman approaching childbirth entered one of the most dangerous passages of her life. The room around her was usually female. Midwives, female relatives, neighbors, and attendants offered experience, physical support, prayers, food, and practical care. Men might wait nearby, but birth itself was often managed by women whose knowledge came from repeated observation. The midwife occupied an important and complicated position. She could assist normal labor, recognize trouble, cut the cord, care for the newborn, and in Christian communities, perform emergency baptism if a baby seemed likely to die. Some midwives swore oaths to local authorities or church officials. Their expertise was respected because everyone needed it. But later, writers sometimes treated female medical knowledge with suspicion. Medieval childbirth had no modern antisepsis, blood transfusion, surgical safety, or antibiotics. Hemorrhage, obstructed labor, infection, and eclampsia could kill. Yet we should not imagine complete helplessness. Attendants used position changes, massage, warmth, herbal preparations, lubrication, prayer, and accumulated experience. Some treatments helped, others did not. The absence of modern medicine did not mean the absence of care. Pain was expected, but so was survival. Women prepared linens, arranged attendants, made wills in some cases, and prayed to saints associated with childbirth. Relics, girdles, written charms, and sacred objects could provide reassurance. To a modern observer, ritual and medicine may appear separate. For the woman in labor, both belonged to one attempt to reach the other side alive. After birth came recovery, nursing, and the immediate demands of the household. Wealthy women might employ wet nurses, especially in courts and cities, though choices were shaped by fashion, health, and family strategy. Most women nursed their own infants when able. Breastfeeding connected maternal health to nutrition, work, and spacing between births. A nursing mother still had tasks, and rest depended on the labor of others. Now, the woman we followed from dawn has become one among many possibilities. She might be unmarried and earning wages. She might be a wife, managing a workshop. She might be pregnant, widowed, serving in another household, or considering religious life. The point is not that she could do everything. No one could. The point is that medieval society assigned women essential functions while constructing laws and stories that often minimized the authority those functions created. Religious life offered one of the clearest alternatives to marriage, although it was never a simple escape. A girl or woman entering a convent stepped into a disciplined institution with rules, hierarchy, property, work, and politics of its own. She exchanged the authority of a father or husband for the authority of an abbess, a rule, and the wider church. For some, this was imposed by family strategy. For others, it was a chosen vocation. For many, motives were mixed. A convent could be a place of prayer, but also of education, administration, medicine, music, and artistic production. Nuns sang the daily offices, read devotional works, cared for guests, managed estates, copied or commissioned books, taught girls, and maintained relationships with patrons. Wealthy houses held land and collected rents. Poorer houses struggled with debt, repairs, and food, just like secular households, except their meetings contained more Latin and fewer opportunities to blame a husband. The abbess could exercise substantial authority. She supervised property, servants, tenants, discipline, finances, and spiritual life. In some regions, powerful abbesses governed communities of women and men, received nobles, influenced local politics, and controlled extensive lands. Their authority did not erase the church's male hierarchy, but it created spaces where women led institutions over generations. Convents also preserved female literacy. A nun might learn Latin well enough to follow the liturgy, read scripture and commentary, compose music, write letters, or manage records. Not every nun was a scholar, and educational standards varied widely. Yet religious communities produced women whose intellectual lives would have been difficult elsewhere. Hildegard of Bingen is one famous example, but her fame can distort the broader picture. She wrote theology, natural history, medical material, letters, poetry, and music, and she advised powerful men with extraordinary confidence. She was exceptional in scale, not in the basic fact that a religious woman could study, write, teach, and administer. Less famous nuns left account books, copied prayers, composed songs, and educated novices without becoming symbols for later centuries. Women outside convents also pursued intense religious lives. Some became anchoresses, living in enclosed cells attached to churches. Their physical world narrowed dramatically, yet their social and spiritual influence could expand. Visitors sought advice through a window. Patrons supplied food. Clergy brought communion. An anchoress could become a respected figure whose isolation placed her at the center of a community's concerns. Others joined informal religious movements, worked in hospitals, or lived in communities that did not always fit standard monastic rules. Beguines in parts of Northern Europe formed female communities, where women could pursue devotion, work, teach, and serve without taking permanent vows in the same way as nuns. Their flexibility attracted women who wanted religious purpose without complete enclosure. It also made some church authorities nervous. Institutions often become suspicious when women organize effectively without waiting for a familiar category. Mystical experience gave certain women another form of voice. Visionaries described encounters with Christ, saints, heaven, hell, and divine love. Their bodies, illnesses, fasting, and emotions became part of spiritual authority. Clerics might record and interpret their words, which means their voices reach us through mail editing. Even so, women such as Julian of Norwich, Catherine of Siena, and many lesser-known mystics shaped theology and devotional culture. Julian wrote that divine love could be understood through the image of motherhood, describing Christ in maternal language. Catherine wrote to popes and rulers with a force that would have been astonishing from almost anyone, let alone a laywoman without formal office. Mysticism did not remove gender barriers. It allowed some women to claim that their message came from a source higher than the men who might silence them. That strategy carried risk. A woman who claimed divine inspiration could be honored as holy or condemned as deceptive. Approval depended on doctrine, reputation, clerical support, politics, and whether her message threatened established power. The line between saint and heretic was not drawn by sincerity alone. Religious ideals also shaped ordinary women's bodies. Virginity was praised as spiritually superior, while marriage was accepted as a legitimate but lower state in much clerical writing. Menstruation, pregnancy, sexuality, and childbirth attracted medical and moral interpretation. Women were associated with Eve's sin and Mary's obedience, with temptation and compassion, disorder and holiness. Contradictory models surrounded them from birth. These ideas mattered because they influenced law, preaching, medicine, and self-understanding. Yet people did not simply obey texts. A village wife could listen to a sermon on female silence and then spend the afternoon bargaining loudly over onions. A noblewoman could fund a monastery while defending a lawsuit. A nun could preach through writing even when formal preaching was restricted. Ideology and practice rarely matched perfectly. Medicine provides another field where the difference between theory and practice becomes clear. University medicine in medieval Europe drew heavily on ancient Greek and Roman authors transmitted and expanded through Arabic scholarship. Learned physicians discussed humors, complexion, anatomy, diet, and reproduction. Access to such physicians depended on wealth and location. Most people first relied on household knowledge. Local healers, midwives, apothecaries, surgeons, clergy, relatives, and women experienced in care. Women prepared remedies for fever, wounds, digestive problems, pain, skin conditions, and childbirth. They used plants, animal products, minerals, food, heat, rest, prayer, and touch. Some remedies contained substances with real pharmacological effects. Others were useless or dangerous. The same is true of learned medicine. A university degree did not prevent a physician from recommending bloodletting at exactly the wrong moment. The household was the first hospital. A sick person needed warmth, broth, clean linen, help with bodily functions, observation, and company. Women performed much of this nursing labor. It required judgment. Was the fever rising? Could the patient swallow? Was the wound changing color? Had the child urinated? These observations did not appear in grand medical treatises, but survival often depended on them. Some women practiced medicine more publicly. Trota of Salerno became associated with influential writings on women's health, though scholars debate exactly which texts belong to which authors within the tradition. Female practitioners appear in records as physicians, surgeons, midwives, and healers, especially in Mediterranean cities. Their numbers were limited, and professional regulation increasingly restricted access in some places. The history is not a simple decline from freedom to exclusion, but formal institutions often favored men with university training. Jewish women also participated in medical practice, sometimes serving patients across religious boundaries. Their skills could be valued, and their communities persecuted at the same time. In cities where Christians, Jews, and Muslims lived near one another, medical knowledge crossed linguistic and religious lines despite official suspicion. Illness has always been less interested in prejudice than the people treating it. Care for the dead was another major female responsibility. Women washed bodies, wrapped them, kept vigil, organized mourning, prepared food for gatherings, and preserved memory through prayer and story. Death was visible in medieval communities. Bodies remained in homes before burial. Churchyards occupied central spaces. Memorial services repeated across years. Familiarity did not make grief shallow. It gave grief rituals. Women often served as the keepers of family memory. They remembered kinship, birthdays, deaths, godparent relationships, marriage connections, and old obligations. In elite families, this knowledge supported inheritance and diplomacy. In villages, it helped establish who belonged, who owed, and who could call upon whom. Memory was social infrastructure. Written records expanded that infrastructure. Elite women dictated letters, managed seals, witnessed charters, and commissioned chronicles. Merchants' wives handled accounts. Widows made wills. Nuns recorded donations. The idea that medieval women were universally illiterate collapses as soon as we ask what literacy meant and whose documents survived. Christine de Pizan built a career from writing in late medieval France. After widowhood left her with dependence and financial problems, she composed poetry, political advice, biography, and a famous defense of women against misogynistic literary traditions. Her work demonstrates both possibility and limitation. She could become a professional author because she possessed education, court connections, talent, and necessity. Most women had no such combination, yet she also proves that medieval debates about women's intelligence were not invented by modern historians. Women answered them at the time. In The Book of the City of Ladies, Christine imagined a symbolic city built from stories of capable women. She challenged the claim that female inferiority was obvious by pointing to history, scripture, and experience. Her method feels familiar because the accusation she confronted was familiar. When a society repeatedly declares one group naturally incapable while depending on its labor, evidence accumulates in the kitchen, field, workshop, convent, court, and palace. Literature provides traces of women as readers and patrons. Noblewomen commissioned romances, devotional works, histories, and translations. Their tastes shaped what authors produced. A manuscript might be dedicated to a queen or countess because her support paid for parchment, scribes, illuminators, and time. Patronage was cultural power exercised through resources. Music also offered women a voice. Nuns sang complex liturgy. Aristocratic women learned songs and instruments. Female troubadours in southern France composed lyric poetry, though far fewer of their works survive than those of men. Work songs, lullabies, laments, and local melodies rarely entered manuscripts, but they accompanied labor and memory. The absence of notation does not mean silence. Among the nobility, a girl's education prepared her for management as much as display. She might learn reading, religion, music, embroidery, household organization, estate customs, and courtly behavior. She observed how servants were assigned, how food was purchased, how guests were ranked, and how messages were phrased. A great household was a political institution. Seating, clothing, access, gifts, and hospitality communicated power. A lady's keys became a symbol of authority because they opened stores, chests, and rooms containing valuable goods. Control of keys meant control of food, cloth, plate, documents, medicine, and supplies. Household management required preventing waste and theft while maintaining generosity. A noble family that appeared stingy lost prestige. One that overspent risked debt. The lady balanced performance against resources. Estate management could involve hundreds of people. Officials collected rents, supervised farms, maintained mills, forests, fisheries, and buildings, and reported through accounts. A noblewoman might review these reports, issue instructions, hear complaints, and negotiate with tenants. Her husband's absence could make her the central authority, but absence was not always necessary. Some couples divided responsibilities by skill and geography. Letters from aristocratic women reveal attention to details that sound both grand and ordinary. They requested repairs, pursued debts, arranged marriages, asked for news, complained about servants, sent gifts, protected heirs, and worried about health. Political history appears beside missing cloth and unpaid rent because real power is made from both. A castle was not merely a fortress where a lady waited at a window. It was a household full of staff, animals, storage rooms, workshops, kitchens, chapels, visitors, and paperwork. During siege or war, it became a logistical problem under pressure. Food had to be rationed, wells protected, defenders paid or persuaded, messages sent, civilians sheltered. A woman commanding such a place did not need to swing a sword to make military decisions. Some did take more direct roles. Chronicles describe noblewomen organizing defenses, raising troops, negotiating surrender, and protecting family claims. These stories are memorable because warfare was coded masculine, but they were possible because lordship included responsibilities that could pass through women when inheritance and circumstance aligned. Still, elite power came with constraints. A wealthy heiress attracted political control. Her marriage could be arranged to transfer land. A queen's fertility became a public matter. A widow with a valuable estate faced pressure to remarry. A noblewoman's children might be hostages to alliance. Privilege enlarged her resources and the scale of forces acting upon her. The gap between elite and poor women was enormous. A countess managing estates and a dairy worker carrying pails both performed economic labor. But one could command servants while the other sold her strength. They should not be merged into a comforting story of shared female resilience. Class shaped nutrition, risk, privacy, legal support, and the consequences of error. Yet class did not erase interdependence. Elite households depended on nurses, cooks, laundresses, spinners, chamber servants, market sellers, and agricultural workers. The polished appearance of court rested on labor, performed out of sight. A jeweled gown began with sheep, flax, dyers, spinners, weavers, seamstresses, merchants, and servants, responsible for cleaning and storage. Splendor was organized work wearing embroidery. By evening, our imagined woman may be preparing a second meal, finishing thread by firelight, checking a child's fever, or calculating tomorrow's market goods. Somewhere else, a nun is singing the night office. A widow is closing a shop. A queen is sealing a letter. Their lives are not the same. What links them is not a single character called the medieval woman, but a repeated pattern. Institutions assigned women limits, and daily necessity repeatedly placed responsibility in their hands. At the highest level of society, the contradiction between restriction and responsibility became impossible to hide. Medieval political thought usually presented kingship as male. Warriors, judges, and lords were imagined as men, and succession customs often favored sons. Yet royal families could not function without women. Queens carried diplomatic alliances in their marriages, produced heirs, managed households, distributed patronage, interceded for petitioners, and helped turn a ruler's family into a stable dynasty. A queen's position depended on relationships. She might be a foreign bride, learning a new language and court. She might be a king's partner, a rival faction's target, the mother of an heir, or a widow protecting her children's claims. Formal titles mattered, but access mattered more. The person able to speak with the king privately, recommend an official, arrange a marriage, or soften a punishment could shape policy without issuing a public decree. Intercession became one of the most accepted forms of queenly power. Petitioners asked the queen to request mercy, land, payment, or justice from the king. This role was described as compassionate and feminine, which made it politically useful. The queen could influence decisions while appearing to support, rather than challenge, royal authority. Mercy was not weakness, it was a route into government. Queens also controlled their own households, lands, and revenues. Their estates funded servants, charity, clothing, travel, religious patronage, and political relationships. Managing those resources required officers, correspondence, audits, and judgment. A queen without money depended entirely on the king. A queen with lands possessed a network. Regency made female power more visible. When a king was absent, ill, imprisoned, or underage, a queen or noblewoman might govern in his name. She summoned councils, supervised defense, negotiated with nobles, and maintained administration. Her authority was often presented as temporary, but temporary rule could last for years and shape a kingdom permanently. Eleanor of Aquitaine illustrates both reach and danger. She inherited a vast duchy, became Queen of France and later England, participated in crusading politics, supported her sons during rebellion, endured imprisonment, and governed actively into old age. Her life cannot represent all medieval women or even all queens. It does show that wealth, lineage, and personality could create a political career that crossed kingdoms and decades. Blanche of Castile governed France during the minority of her son, Louis IX, and again during his crusading absence. She faced rebellious nobles, managed finances, and protected royal authority. Her success rested not on pretending to be a man, but on using motherhood, dynasty, religious legitimacy, and administrative skill. Medieval women in power often worked through accepted identities while stretching what those identities allowed. Margaret of Denmark helped unite Denmark, Norway, and Sweden under her rule at the end of the 14th century. She operated in a political world filled with male rivals and shifting loyalties, yet maintained authority through negotiation, appointments, finance, and military pressure. Later chroniclers debated how to describe her because language built for kings did not always fit a woman who governed like one. Not every powerful woman was a queen. Countesses, duchesses, abbesses, castellans, and heiresses controlled regional power. Some negotiated between feuding men, some financed campaigns, some resisted kings, some failed. Female leadership was neither universally accepted nor automatically effective. It faced the same problems as male leadership, plus suspicion directed specifically at women. A successful woman could be praised as wise, virtuous, maternal, or exceptionally favored by God. An unsuccessful one could be condemned as unnatural, sexually dangerous, or manipulated by men. Gender shaped the explanation of every outcome. A king who acted firmly might be decisive. A queen who acted firmly risked becoming monstrous in the story written by her enemies. Joan of Arc demonstrates the extreme power of such storytelling. She was a peasant teenager who claimed divine guidance, entered a royal military struggle, helped inspire French forces, and became a political symbol. Her clothing, visions, obedience, and gender were examined in court before her execution. Decades later, another church court overturned the judgment. Her story is extraordinary, not because medieval women normally led armies, but because religious authority and wartime crisis allowed one young woman to enter spaces closed to almost everyone of her class and sex. War affected far more women than the few remembered as leaders. Armies consumed grain, damaged fields, seized animals, spread disease, and forced families to flee. Women defended households, negotiated with soldiers, hid goods, followed camps, supplied food, nursed wounds, and searched for missing relatives. Some were raped, enslaved, or killed. Chronicles preferred battles. Civilian survival usually remained in the margins. Women traveled with armies as laundresses, cooks, traders, healers, sex workers, servants, and family members. Military authorities sometimes attempted to control or expel them, yet armies depended on services they provided. The clean image of an all-male campaign is another product of records that counted combatants and ignored the people keeping them fed and clothed. Sieges placed women inside the conflict. A town under siege needed rationing, water, repairs, fire control, nursing, and morale. Women carried stones, reinforced walls, extinguished flames, and supported defenders. Some accounts describe them fighting directly, others emphasize prayer and endurance. Both could occur. A siege turned every inhabitant into part of a military calculation. Law also placed women inside public conflict. They appeared as plaintiffs, defendants, witnesses, creditors, debtors, tenants, and victims. Court records preserve names that chronicles ignore. A brewer fined for poor measure, a widow claiming land, a servant accusing an employer, a wife seeking separation, and a mother defending an inheritance all entered the legal world. Access did not guarantee fairness. Legal language was technical, officials were male, and outcomes favored those with money, kin, and reputation. Still, women learned to use procedure. They produced witnesses, invoked custom, hired representatives, and returned repeatedly. Litigation was not a modern right applied evenly. It was a tool available under conditions, and women used it when the alternative was surrender. Inheritance disputes could become especially fierce. Land carried income and status. A daughter's claim might conflict with an uncle's expectation. A widow's dower might reduce what heirs received. Guardians controlled the property of minors and could profit from delay. Families argued through courts because affection often became less persuasive when acreage was involved. Wills give us a quieter view. Women left clothing, beds, pots, livestock, money, devotional objects, and small personal goods. A gown could pass to a daughter, a cooking vessel to a servant. Money might fund prayers or provide for a grandchild. These items reveal social relationships that grand history misses. They also show women controlling property at death, even when control during life had been limited. Clothing itself communicated legal and moral expectations. Authorities issued sumptuary laws attempting to restrict fabrics, colors, jewelry, and styles according to status. Women were frequent targets because clothing was associated with vanity and sexual display. Yet dress also signaled occupation, marital state, religion, wealth, and local identity. A veil or headdress could communicate respectability. Fine cloth could advertise family success. Used clothing could be sold for cash. Jewish women in medieval Europe faced distinctive opportunities and dangers. In some communities, women participated in lending, trade, medicine, and household business. Widows could manage property and maintain commercial networks. Their literacy might include Hebrew prayers or vernacular documents, depending on education and place. At the same time, Christian rulers imposed taxes, clothing marks, residence restrictions, expulsions, and periodic violence. During accusations of ritual crime or outbreaks of persecution, women and children suffered with entire communities. The Black Death brought catastrophic attacks on Jews accused of poisoning wells. Despite the disease's spread having nothing to do with such fantasies, women's economic visibility did not protect them. It could make them more recognizable targets. Muslim women in Al-Andalus and Sicily lived under different legal and cultural systems from Christian women in Northern Europe. Islamic law granted women defined property and inheritance rights, though usually unequal to men's shares and shaped by family practice. Urban women participated in crafts, trade, education, medicine, poetry, and slavery in varied circumstances. Christian conquest altered these worlds gradually and violently. Calling all of this simply medieval European womanhood would erase the very diversity that makes the period understandable. Byzantine women belonged to another legal and imperial tradition. Elite women could exercise influence at court, found monasteries, commission art, and manage wealth. Empresses sometimes ruled or served as regents. Ordinary women worked in markets, textiles, households, farms, and services. Constantinople's urban scale created possibilities, unlike those of a northern village. The medieval world extended far beyond the familiar stone castle. In Eastern Europe, customary law, conversion, dynastic politics, and frontier conditions shaped women's lives differently again. Noble brides connected ruling houses across Poland, Hungary, Rus, and the Balkans. Rural women worked within agricultural systems adapted to local climate and settlement. War, migration, and enslavement crossed borders repeatedly. There was no single path from girlhood to marriage to widowhood. Slavery must remain part of this story. Medieval economies around the Mediterranean, Black Sea, Baltic, and Islamic worlds moved enslaved people across long distances. Women were purchased for domestic labor, textile work, agriculture, sexual exploitation, and household service. Some gained freedom, married, or built new lives. Many disappeared from records after sale. Their labor helped sustain homes that later appeared respectable and prosperous. The language of household service can hide coercion. A servant with a contract and wages was not the same as an enslaved woman owned as property. A serf bound by obligations was not identical to either. Medieval societies contained several forms of unfreedom, and women's vulnerability increased when legal status, poverty, foreign origin, and gender combined. Migration could weaken protection, but also create opportunity. A young woman entering a town without family might be exposed to exploitation. She might also earn wages unavailable at home, choose from more potential partners, join a craft, or create friendships with other servants. Urban communities formed around neighborhoods, parishes, occupations, and places of origin. Newcomers were not automatically alone. Friendship among women rarely appears clearly in official records, but it shaped life. Women served as godmothers, birth attendants, witnesses, business partners, patrons, correspondents, and neighbors. They lent objects, shared work, carried messages, and provided refuge. Religious and moral literature sometimes distrusted close female conversation. Everyday survival depended upon it. Godparenthood created spiritual kinship. A godmother stood at baptism, formed a recognized bond with the child and parents, and could become part of a support network. These relationships extended family beyond blood and marriage. They also created rules against certain marriages because spiritual kinship was treated seriously by the church. Festivals offered temporary changes in rhythm. Women attended fairs, processions, weddings, dances, plays, and seasonal celebrations. They wore better clothing when possible, exchanged gifts, sold food, met relatives, and participated in communal joy. The Middle Ages were not an uninterrupted gray field of labor. Work was heavy, but people created music, jokes, courtship, games, and feasts around it. Church calendars provided many holy days, though the amount of actual rest varied by occupation and season. A feast could mean mass, followed by food, drink, dancing, and social tension. Authorities complained about disorder because celebration frequently exceeded the version described in sermons. Medieval women were not too exhausted to laugh. They were exhausted and laughed anyway. Humor survives in stories, letters, marginal images, and court testimony. Women teased husbands, mocked neighbors, and became comic characters. Some jokes repeated misogynistic stereotypes. Others reveal women participating in the joke rather than serving only as its target. Human beings did not wait for modern comfort before becoming funny. Sexuality also escaped official control. Clergy preached chastity outside marriage and discipline within it. Court records reveal premarital relationships, adultery, same-sex desire, prostitution, secret marriages, and abandoned children. People negotiated desire with varying degrees of freedom and risk. Women bore heavier consequences because pregnancy made some relationships visible, and reputation shaped future security. The concept of honor tied female sexuality to family standing. A rumor could damage marriage prospects or credit. Men also faced expectations, but sexual double standards were strong. Women accused of misconduct could be punished, shamed, or excluded. Yet communities sometimes tolerated relationships that did not match official rules, especially when couples behaved responsibly and families reached agreement. Local practice could be more flexible than sermons. This tension between written ideals and lived compromise runs through the entire story. Laws declared authority. Work created dependence. Sermons demanded silence. Markets required negotiation. Literature praised obedience. Estates needed management. Women did not live outside patriarchy, but patriarchy did not operate as a machine without friction. Every household, court, convent, and shop produced its own negotiation. The 14th century placed extraordinary pressure on those negotiations. Famine struck parts of Europe early in the century. War disrupted fields and trade. Then the plague arrived and killed a vast share of the population in repeated waves. Every social institution experienced loss. Convents emptied. Workshops lost masters and apprentices. Children lost parents. Widows and widowers remarried. Land changed hands. Labor became scarce. For women who survived, the consequences were uneven. Some inherited property or businesses. Some found better paid work because employers needed hands. Servants could leave for improved conditions. Young women migrated toward towns. Widows became heads of households in greater numbers. Opportunity expanded in the space created by death, which is one of the bleakest bargains history can offer. Authorities tried to restrain the labor market. Laws limited wages, compelled able-bodied people to work, and punished servants who left agreements. These measures reveal that workers possessed bargaining power strong enough to frighten employers. Women appeared among those accused of taking higher wages or moving without permission. Their behavior was not a modern labor movement, but it demonstrated that poor women could respond strategically to changing demand. The same period witnessed rural and urban revolts. Women participated as messengers, suppliers, protesters, rioters, and occasionally leaders. Their presence could be minimized afterward because chroniclers described political violence as male. When women entered public disorder, writers often emphasized shock rather than motivation. Yet taxation, food prices, labor rules, and lordship affected women directly. They had reasons to resist. In towns, female employment sometimes narrowed during the later Middle Ages as guilds strengthened control over skilled trades. Historians debate the pattern because it differed by region and occupation. In some industries, women remained central. In others, formal apprenticeship and membership became harder to obtain. Work did not disappear. It could be pushed into lower-paid, less visible stages. This distinction between exclusion and invisibility matters. A guild might prohibit women from becoming masters, while masters' wives and daughters continued producing goods inside workshops. Official status moved upward toward men. Labor remained distributed through the household. The economy could become more restrictive without becoming less dependent on women. Changes in fashion and luxury created both jobs and criticism. New forms of clothing required sewing, finishing, embroidery, lace, buttons, and decorative work. Women participated in production and consumption. Moralists complained that fashionable women wasted money and provoked desire. Sumptuary laws tried to preserve class distinctions by regulating what different people could wear. Apparently, social order was always one sleeve away from collapse. Beauty practices varied. Women cared for hair, skin, scent, and clothing using available materials. Medical and cosmetic recipes circulated together because appearance and health were linked. Some mixtures were harmless, others contained irritating or toxic substances. The desire to look attractive did not begin with commercial advertising. Neither did the willingness to apply something questionable, because a confident person promised results. Age changed women's roles. A young servant possessed strength but limited authority. A married woman accumulated household knowledge. A widow might gain legal independence. An older woman could become a respected source of memory, care, and mediation. She might supervise births, arrange marriages, manage descendants, or control property. Medieval culture valued youth and fertility, yet communities depended on older women whose experience could not be replaced quickly. Old age itself was relative. High infant mortality lowered life expectancy at birth, but adults who survived childhood could live into their 60s, 70s, or beyond. Not every woman was ancient at 40. Some bore the effects of labor and repeated pregnancy early, while wealthy women could enjoy better nutrition and assistance. Age was shaped by health, class, and luck, not a single number. Grandmothers played an important role where they survived. They cared for children, transmitted skills, and connected family generations. In households where mothers worked or died, older female relatives could become essential. A grandmother did not retire from usefulness. She changed the form of her labor. The authority of older women also attracted suspicion. Knowledge of herbs, childbirth, and neighborhood secrets could make a woman valuable. Under certain conditions, the same knowledge could be recast as dangerous. This brings us to one of the most persistent errors in popular medieval history. The great European witch hunts were not mainly a medieval phenomenon. Belief in harmful magic existed throughout the Middle Ages, and individuals were accused of sorcery. Church authorities condemned some magical practices, while ordinary people used charms and sought healers. But the large, systematic witch persecutions associated with mass trials and executions reached their greatest intensity in the early modern period, especially from the 16th into the 17th centuries. It is therefore misleading to imagine every outspoken medieval herbalist living one argument away from being burned as a witch. Some women were prosecuted for magic, and punishment could be severe. Yet the stereotype moves later patterns backward, erasing change and turning 1,000 years into one permanent bonfire. The relationship between women and healing was more ordinary than the witch image allows. A woman who knew a remedy for coughs was not necessarily considered mysterious. She was the neighbor with experience. A charm might sit beside a herbal preparation, and a prayer without anyone seeing contradiction. Medieval categories of religion, medicine, and magic did not align neatly with modern ones. Accusations became dangerous when illness, death, conflict, envy, and authority combined. A healer whose patient died could face blame. A poor or isolated woman had fewer defenders. A reputation for curses could grow from years of neighborhood disputes. Gender mattered, but so did status, community tension, and political context. The stereotype of universal female power through secret herbal knowledge is as misleading as the stereotype of universal helplessness. Most women knew some household remedies. Far fewer possessed specialized expertise. Knowledge did not make them immune to illness, and traditional treatment did not create a lost paradise of perfect natural medicine. Medieval mothers buried children despite every herb and prayer they knew. Food insecurity was a constant shadow. Harvest failure raised prices, reduced diets, and increased disease. Women stretched grain, substituted ingredients, sold possessions, sought credit, and reduced their own consumption to feed children. These survival strategies are difficult to see in records because they occurred before formal charity or court action. By the time an institution noticed, the household had often been struggling for months. Charity offered partial support. Monasteries, hospitals, parishes, guilds, confraternities, and wealthy donors distributed food, shelter, alms, or care. Women gave and received charity. A noblewoman might found a hospital. A widow might donate a bed. A poor mother might seek bread. Charity expressed compassion, but also reinforced judgments about who deserved help. Hospitals were not modern medical centers. Many offered lodging, food, nursing, and spiritual care to the sick, poor, travelers, pregnant women, or elderly people. Women served as caregivers and sometimes administrators. Clean bedding, regular meals, warmth, and attention could improve survival even when medical theory was limited. Female religious houses also supported local communities through alms, education, and employment. They purchased food, hired workers, rented land, and maintained networks with families. A convent was part of the economy, not a sealed spiritual island. When reformers demanded stricter enclosure, women sometimes resisted because enclosure threatened practical relationships necessary for survival. The late medieval world also saw more vernacular writing by and for women. Marjorie Kempe dictated an account of her pilgrimages, spiritual experiences, family life, and public conflicts. Her voice is emotional, repetitive, determined, and unlike a polished clerical ideal. She traveled widely, negotiated with her husband, argued with clergy, and insisted on the legitimacy of her experience. Readers may find her difficult. Her contemporaries did too, which is part of why she matters. Her story shows that public female piety could inspire admiration and irritation. A woman who wept loudly in church disrupted expectations even when her devotion was sincere. People questioned whether she was holy, unstable, proud, or deceptive. The debate preserved details of a life that quiet obedience might have erased. Travel was physically demanding and socially risky, yet women undertook pilgrimages across regions and seas. They traveled in groups, hired guides, stayed in inns, visited shrines, and brought home badges and stories. A pilgrimage could be devotion, adventure, penance, healing, escape, or all at once. The road widened the world beyond home while exposing travelers to theft, illness, and judgment. Women also traveled through marriage diplomacy. A princess sent to another kingdom might arrive with attendants, books, clothing, religious customs, and political expectations. She had to build a new network among people who viewed her as foreign. Her household could become a center for cultural exchange. Food, fashion, language, saints, artists, and ideas moved with brides. Less privileged migrants carried culture too. A servant brought songs and recipes from her village. A merchant's widow maintained contacts across towns. Refugees carried religious practices. Enslaved women transmitted foodways and language under coercion. Cultural history often assigns change to famous travelers, but households absorbed it through thousands of ordinary arrivals. By the 15th century, European societies were changing through urban growth, commercial expansion, war, print, state formation, and new religious debates. None of these forces affected women in a single direction. Printing eventually made texts cheaper, but printers' workshops could exclude women from formal status while employing family labor. Expanding states created more records, but also more taxation and regulation. Markets created work and intensified inequality. The end of the Middle Ages did not suddenly free women, nor did it close every opportunity they once possessed. Historical boundaries are conveniences. A woman born in 1470 did not wake on a particular morning and discover that the Renaissance had replaced her legal problems with tasteful architecture. Change arrived unevenly through institutions, prices, wars, technologies, and family decisions. This is why the phrase, "women were stronger back then," needs care. Medieval women endured labor and danger that many people today have never faced. Their competence deserves respect, but suffering is not a training program we should romanticize. High maternal mortality did not improve character. Legal inequality did not create wisdom. A woman who carried water for miles was not morally superior because plumbing had not been invented. She was tired. The opposite claim is equally false. Medieval women were not passive shadows waiting for modernity to give them a mind. They planned, worked, negotiated, loved, fought, wrote, governed, healed, prayed, traded, and made mistakes. Their lives contained ambition and resignation, courage and fear, cooperation and conflict. They were human before they were examples. Popular stories often replace that complexity with empowerment slogans. A medieval woman becomes unbeatable, sharper than every man, able to manage an estate, deliver a baby, brew perfect ale, defend a castle, and remember every debt without sleeping. Real people specialized. They depended on others. They failed. They became sick. They needed help. Their strength came through networks as much as individual skill. A village woman relied on a miller, smith, midwife, neighbors, children, husband, kin, church, and market. A queen relied on clerks, servants, nobles, messengers, and soldiers. A nun relied on her community. Independence was limited for almost everyone in medieval society. Competence meant knowing how to participate in dependence without allowing it to become collapse. That may be the quality most difficult for a modern visitor to understand. Medieval life did not reward the fantasy of doing everything alone. It rewarded reliable relationships. A woman needed people who would help at harvest, stand as witnesses, extend credit, attend childbirth, protect children, and remember promises. Her reputation was a form of security because institutions were weak or distant. A modern stranger arriving with impressive technology, but no social ties, would be vulnerable. A phone without a network is a polished object. A wallet filled with unfamiliar currency is decoration. The woman at the well might not understand the devices, but she knows who owns the cart, who can repair an iron hinge, which road floods, and where a traveler can sleep safely. In her world, that knowledge is power. She would not judge you only by strength. She would watch whether you listened, whether you returned, borrowed tools, whether you worked when rain approached, and whether you kept your word when no official forced you. Medieval survival depended on trust, accumulated through repeated behavior. One grand performance could not replace a season of reliability. This may be the truth hidden behind the exaggerated claim that you could not handle medieval women. The difficulty would not be that every woman was intimidating. It would be that her standards grew from consequences. A missed task could spoil food. A careless purchase could empty a store. A broken promise could damage a family's credit. She had little patience for problems created merely because someone preferred talking to doing. Yet she also understood fatigue. She lived among people who became sick, frightened, distracted, and overwhelmed. Communities offered forgiveness because everyone eventually needed it. Reliability did not mean perfection. It meant returning to the task, admitting error, and contributing enough that others could rely on you tomorrow. Return now to the house where the day began. The light has changed. What was gray before sunrise is now a pale gold across the yard. The woman at the hearth has not remained in one place. She has moved between fire, storage chest, garden, animal pen, field, and doorway. She has spoken to family, perhaps a neighbor, perhaps a trader passing on the road. Her labor has not followed a neat list because medieval work rarely respected categories. One task interrupted another. A child cried. A pot boiled over. An animal escaped with the confidence of a creature that contributed nothing to household planning. The rhythm was demanding, but it was not without pleasure. Work created companionship. Women spun together, washed together, harvested together, brewed together, watched children together, and attended births together. Repetition allowed conversation. Stories traveled with wool and water. Songs made long tasks easier. A joke at the right moment could transform another hour of labor from punishment into shared endurance. Food also created pleasure beyond survival. A well-made loaf, fresh cheese, ripe fruit, a feast day pie, or ale from a successful batch mattered precisely because effort and scarcity gave them value. Women exchanged recipes and techniques without using written measurements. A cook could take pride in texture, color, or flavor. Hospitality allowed a household to display generosity even when resources were limited. Feasts altered ordinary rules. Weddings, baptisms, saints' days, harvest celebrations, and seasonal festivals brought larger meals, music, dancing, and better clothes. Women prepared much of the food, which meant celebration could add labor before it offered rest. Yet preparation itself could become social. Relatives arrived, tasks were divided, news was exchanged. The house expanded beyond its usual limits. Dancing offered young people a rare setting for public attraction. Clergy sometimes complained about suggestive songs and close contact, which strongly suggests that the participants enjoyed themselves. Women watched and were watched. Clothing, posture, confidence, and family reputation all mattered. Courtship was not only an economic interview conducted by worried parents, it also contained embarrassment, longing, rivalry, and the universal human discovery that conversation becomes more difficult when one person matters too much. Romantic literature exaggerated this world through tales of knights and noble ladies, secret devotion, impossible love, and noble suffering. Courtly love did not describe the ordinary rules of marriage. It provided an imaginative language for desire, often centered on elite audiences. Women listened to, read, commissioned, and sometimes wrote such literature. They could enjoy fantasies that differed sharply from their own arrangements, just as modern audiences enjoy stories without mistaking them for legal advice. Marriage could contain affection expressed through work rather than speeches. A husband brought home a tool, repaired a wall, or arranged help during illness. A wife saved a preferred food, managed money carefully, or defended his reputation. Wills sometimes record tender phrases, but most daily affection vanished without documentation. Love was often practical because life was practical. Conflict was practical too. Couples argued over money, relatives, sex, work, drinking, property, and absence. Humor might soften disagreements. Kin might intervene. Neighbors could hear everything through thin walls. Private life existed, but privacy was scarce. A marriage became partly a community concern when conflict disrupted labor or threatened safety. Women sometimes left marriages, though separation was difficult. The church generally opposed divorce in the modern sense, but marriages could be annulled for specific reasons, and spouses could live apart under certain conditions. Desertion was common enough to appear repeatedly in court. A man might travel and never return. A woman might flee violence or form another household. Law described ideals. Geography made alternatives. Illegitimacy carried social and legal disadvantages. But unmarried mothers were not erased from communities. Some received help from kin. Some worked as servants. Some pursued fathers for support through courts. Others faced shame, poverty, or abandonment. The experience varied with reputation and resources. A wealthy man's child and a poor servant's child did not meet the same world. Women also experienced sexuality outside the stories preserved by male judges and confessors. Desire rarely leaves clean evidence. Same-sex intimacy among women is particularly difficult to trace because authorities documented it less often and interpreted it through categories unlike modern identities. Scattered legal, literary, and religious references show that medieval people knew women could desire women, even when the archive refused them sustained voices. The body was never only private. A woman's fertility affected inheritance. Her clothing signaled status. Her labor shaped household income. Her illness redistributed work. Her sexuality attracted moral supervision. Pregnancy made family strategy visible. Aging changed authority. Medieval society read women's bodies constantly, and women learned to manage that attention. Menstruation, for example, carried medical and religious ideas. Learned writers explained it through humoral theory. Some religious commentators associated it with impurity, though Christian practice varied and did not simply copy older ritual law. Ordinary management depended on cloth, washing, privacy, and experience. Like many intimate subjects, it appears rarely in records because people handled it without inviting a clerk. Clothing offered one way to control presentation. A married woman might cover her hair according to local custom. A widow could wear particular styles. A nun's habit marked community and discipline. A merchant's wife used quality fabric to display prosperity. A laborer's clothing prioritized durability. Women adapted fashion within means, and even modest garments could carry careful choices of color, trim, pins, or arrangement. Jewelry functioned as ornament and portable wealth. A brooch fastened clothing while announcing status. Rings could mark marriage or devotion. Beads, crosses, girdles, and pins passed through generations. In crisis, an object could be pawned or sold. Beauty and security occupied the same small piece of metal. Hair drew special attention. It could represent youth, sexuality, honor, mourning, or religious status. Elite hairstyles became elaborate. Moralists complained because moralists were professionally troubled by the possibility that someone might enjoy being noticed. Women continued arranging their hair. Cleanliness also deserves rescue from fantasy. Medieval people washed hands, faces, linens, dishes, and bodies according to access, custom, and circumstance. Public bathhouses existed in many towns. Wealthy households prepared tubs. Rural people used basins, streams, and heated water. Bathing frequency varied, and urban sanitation could be poor. But the belief that everyone proudly remained unwashed is false. Women performed much of the labor that made cleanliness possible. They hauled water, heated it, made soap, scrubbed cloth, emptied waste, and cared for the sick. A clean shirt represented hidden work. So did a swept floor, washed cup, or prepared bath. Comfort rested on labor that disappeared as soon as it succeeded. Housing conditions varied as widely as women's lives. A poor cottage might contain one main room, but many medieval homes had partitions, lofts, separate work areas, or multiple buildings. Urban houses could rise several stories with shop space below and living rooms above. Elite residences contained chambers, halls, kitchens, chapels, storerooms, and service areas. Women navigated architecture shaped by wealth and occupation. Space influenced authority. The hall was public. The chamber offered greater privacy. The kitchen held intense labor and access to food. The storeroom held value. A woman responsible for keys moved through these spaces differently from a junior servant. Medieval power could be mapped by who entered which door. Night did not end responsibility. Fires needed banking. Infants woke. Sick relatives required care. Animals gave birth at inconvenient times because livestock have never respected human sleep. A woman's rest depended on age, status, household size, and whether another person shared the work. Wealth purchased servants, but supervising servants remained labor. Sleep was often communal. Beds were expensive and shared. Servants slept in workspaces, halls, lofts, or chambers near employers. Children slept with siblings or parents. Curtains offered warmth and limited privacy to those who had them. The modern expectation of one private room per person would have seemed extravagant enough to require a royal title. Dreams entered religious and medical interpretation. A frightening dream might be blamed on digestion, anxiety, temptation, or divine warning. Women told dreams, sought interpretation, and found meaning in them. The sleeping mind was not separate from faith. Fear accompanied daily life, but not as constant panic. People adapted to risks they understood. A difficult winter, childbirth, epidemic, or military raid could be terrifying. So could a debt, accusation, or missing child. Women responded through preparation, prayer, networks, and habit. Courage often meant continuing while afraid, rather than feeling no fear. Grief was woven into family life. A woman might bury children, parents, siblings, friends, and a husband. Mourning had formal expressions in clothing, prayer, vigils, and memorial gifts. Widows could be expected to display restraint and devotion, though real grief did not follow a schedule. Some remarried quickly for economic reasons, others never remarried. Neither decision reveals how deeply they loved the dead. Remarriage could protect a household, combine labor, provide a guardian for children, or threaten inheritance. Adult children might resist a mother's new husband. A widow might negotiate terms more carefully after learning from the first marriage. She could demand protection of her property, or choose a partner closer to her interests. Experience changed the bargain. For some women, widowhood lasted decades. They became senior figures in families, patrons of churches, business owners, landlords, and guardians. Their wills and accounts provide some of the richest evidence of female decision-making. This is partly because law recognized them more clearly. Once no husband stood between them and the clerk. That observation reveals how archives distort life. A woman's work during marriage may remain hidden under her husband's name. The same work becomes documented after his death. Historians must read backward, recognizing that sudden legal visibility often reflects long preparation. The same principle applies to famous women. A queen's regency becomes visible during a king's absence, but she did not learn government the morning he departed. A widow continued to shop because she had long understood it. An abbess governed because years of religious life prepared her. Crisis revealed capacity that ordinary routine had concealed. This capacity did not make women immune to failure. Estates were mismanaged. Businesses collapsed. Healers lost patience. Queens made disastrous choices. Mothers quarreled with children. Nuns broke rules. Servants stole. Market sellers cheated. To insist that medieval women were always wiser than men is not respect. It is another form of fantasy. Respect begins with allowing them the full range of humanity. Some were generous, some cruel, some ambitious, some cautious, some deeply devout. Some performed devotion because society expected it. Some loved work. Many simply did it. Some challenged rules. Others enforced them against younger or poorer women. Women participated in hierarchy as well as suffering under it. A noblewoman could exploit peasants. A mistress could abuse servants. An urban craftswoman could exclude competitors. A Christian woman could share anti-Semitic prejudice. A free woman could own an enslaved servant. Gender did not erase class, religion, or power. This is why an honest history cannot end with a simple celebration of resilience. Resilience is admirable, but it can become a polite word for the fact that people were forced to survive unfair systems. Medieval women sustained households and economies that often denied them equal authority. Their work made society possible, and the same society frequently treated that work as natural obligation rather than achievement. The record itself participated in that imbalance. Scribes named landholders more often than milkers. Chroniclers recorded commanders more often than nurses. Guilds listed masters more often than wives who produced goods. Theology preserved arguments about women more often than conversations among them. Recovering their history requires looking at what institutions considered too ordinary to mention. Archaeology helps. Spindle whorls, needles, cooking pots, keys, combs, jewelry, shoes, medical tools, workshop debris, graves, and buildings reveal patterns. Myth. Skeletal evidence can show injury, diet, disease, and physical stress, though interpretation must be cautious. Objects do not speak plainly. They answer only the questions researchers learn to ask. Art helps too, but images contain conventions. A manuscript showing women harvesting may reflect real labor while arranging it for moral or seasonal symbolism. A queen's portrait displays authority, not an ordinary mourning. A carved Eve teaches theology. A market scene might exaggerate disorder. Visual evidence becomes strongest when compared with accounts, law, objects, and archaeology. Women's own words are especially valuable and unevenly preserved. Letters, wills, visions, poems, petitions, trial statements, account notes, and books offer moments of direct expression. Even these may be copied, translated, or recorded by men. A court clerk summarized speech. A confessor edited a vision. A family preserved one letter and discarded another. The voice survives through a filter. Still, it survives. A widow insists a debt was false. A queen asks an official to protect her servant. A nun complains about inadequate food. A mother arranges a child's future. A mystic describes fear and love. A merchant's wife demands payment. These are not silent women. They are women speaking across institutions that did not always expect us to listen. What would happen if a modern person entered their world? The obvious difficulties would be practical. You might not know how to start the fire, milk an animal, spin thread, identify spoiled grain, or negotiate customary rights. You would misjudge distance because every journey required feet, animals, weather, and permission. You would discover that convenience has hidden the number of systems supporting your life. The social difficulties would be just as serious. You might speak too casually to a superior, misunderstand religious obligations, ignore kinship, or treat a promise as private when witnesses considered it public. You might assume money could solve a problem that actually required reputation. The woman beside you would understand these rules because she had practiced them from childhood. She would not necessarily be impressed by modern confidence. She might be interested in your knowledge, but she would test whether it worked. Could you help before rain? Could you carry water without spilling half? Could you mend rather than explain why mending was inefficient? Could you remain useful when the plan failed? Her competence might feel severe because it was adapted to scarcity. She planned ahead because winter punished optimism. She saved cloth because replacement was expensive. She watched stores because hunger arrived gradually, and then all at once. Her standards were not a personality trend. They were memory shaped by consequence. Yet she might be astonished by your world in return. Clean water from a tap, safe childbirth, antibiotics, legal rights, washing machines, refrigeration, electric light, education, and communication across distance would appear miraculous. She would not necessarily reject them in favor of hard work. Someone who spent years hauling water would probably understand plumbing faster than a romantic historian. She might also ask uncomfortable questions. Why, with so much labor-saving technology, do people still lack time? Why can food be abundant while families go hungry? Why do women continue performing unpaid care that economies struggle to value? Why does work remain invisible when it occurs inside a home? The past would not simply admire the present. It would recognize some of its habits. Modern households still depend on planning, care, memory, food preparation, cleaning, emotional support, and the management of countless small needs. Technology has changed the tasks, but not eliminated them. Women still perform a disproportionate share in many societies. The medieval record teaches us how easily essential labor disappears when it is described as natural. It also teaches caution about progress. Legal rights, medical safety, education, and economic opportunity have changed profoundly, and those changes matter. The answer is not to claim that nothing has improved. It is to notice that old assumptions can survive inside new systems. Work remains easiest to ignore when everyone notices only its absence. The medieval woman at the center of this story was never one person. She was a way of entering a crowded historical landscape. Now the light outside her house is fading. The day's labor has left traces. Bread cools near the hearth. A repaired garment rests beside a spindle. Water stands in a vessel because someone carried it. An animal is secured. A child sleeps more quietly than before. No chronicler records this evening. No official seal confirms that the work occurred. The kingdom does not know her name, yet the household has survived another day. and medieval civilization is built from millions of such days. Kings depended on taxes from fields women worked. Armies depended on food women processed. Markets depended on goods women produced and sold. Churches depended on donations, care, and devotion women supplied. Dynasties depended on women's bodies, marriages, counsel, and inheritance. Literature depended on female patrons and readers. Communities depended on their memory. This does not mean women secretly ruled everything. It means power has more forms than command. The authority to give an order is visible. The ability to make life continue is often not. Medieval women possessed both in different proportions, under different conditions, and with different consequences. Some stood before courts, some stood behind stalls, some stood at bedsides, walls, altars, looms, ovens, and graves. Some wrote books. Some could not sign their names. Some inherited kingdoms. Some owned only the clothing they wore. Their experiences cannot be reduced to weakness or strength. The most accurate word may be necessary. Women were necessary to medieval society in ways that medieval society often acknowledged only partially. That necessity could create respect, bargaining power, trust, and opportunity. It could also become an excuse to demand endless labor without freedom. So the real reason a modern visitor might struggle is not that medieval women were born tougher. They were trained by their world, supported by networks, constrained by law, and tested by work, repeated until it became knowledge. You would be entering halfway through a lesson they had studied all their lives. At first, you might notice the heavy bucket, the smoke, the rough cloth, and the early hour. Later, you would notice the decisions: which grain to save, which neighbor to trust, which child needs rest, which debt must be paid first, which argument should be challenged, and which allowed to pass. Survival was not only physical strength, it was judgment. That judgment is what the fairy tale misses. The woman at the castle window, the helpless maiden, the silent peasant wife, and the mysterious healer are fragments enlarged into characters. Real medieval women moved between dependence and authority, labor and pleasure, fear and courage, obedience and negotiation. They did not wait outside history. They lived inside its machinery, turning grain into food, fiber into cloth, property into inheritance, marriage into alliance, devotion into community, and memory into continuity. Much of that machinery was built to favor men. It still could not run without women. When the fire is finally banked for the night, the house becomes quiet, but not secure forever. Tomorrow will bring another list of needs. The woman does not know that centuries later people will call her life simple. She would probably find that description confusing. Nothing about balancing weather, food, health, law, work, family, faith, and reputation feels simple from inside it. She also does not know that later stories will make her either powerless or invincible. Both versions would seem strange. She knows her limits. She knows who helps her. She knows where she has authority and where she does not. She knows that skill is not the same as freedom, and endurance is not the same as approval. Perhaps that is the final correction history offers. Medieval women were not remarkable because hardship purified them. Hardship harmed them, exhausted them, and sometimes killed them. They were remarkable because, within those conditions, they continued making choices, building relationships, preserving knowledge, and creating lives that were more than suffering. They loved particular people, preferred particular songs, remembered particular insults, and took pride in particular work. They worried about tomorrow and laughed at dinner. They mourned children and argued over prices. They prayed sincerely and occasionally became distracted. They were not symbols until later generations needed symbols. The woman beside the hearth deserves something more difficult than admiration. She deserves attention. Attention to the work, the law, the class, the region, the faith, the age, and the unequal choices shaping her day. Once those details return, the medieval world becomes less romantic, less cartoonishly cruel, and far more human. Sometimes, attention begins with a name. Court rolls and wills preserve women called Alice. Agnes, Matilda, Marjorie, Joan, Beatrice, and countless local variations. The names appear beside ordinary disputes. A rent was unpaid. A strip of land changed hands. A barrel contained less ale than promised. A servant left before the agreed term. A widow demanded the return of a cooking pot. None of these events altered the fate of a kingdom, but together they reveal the practical boundaries of a life. A woman who argued over a pot was not being trivial. Metal vessels were expensive. They prepared food, heated water, and represented stored value. A missing cloak, chest, cow, spindle, or bed could damage a household for years. Medieval records often seem obsessed with small property because small property carried large consequences. Women's history becomes clearer when we stop measuring importance only by crowns and battles. The same records reveal humor without intending to. Neighbors insulted one another with creativity. Market sellers protested fines. Spouses accused each other of wasting goods. Officials attempted to regulate animals that ignored regulations completely. Women appear not as solemn representatives of their gender, but as individuals having difficult Tuesdays. That ordinary texture is one of the strongest protections against myth. Archaeologists sometimes find a spindle whorl worn smooth by use, a key buried beside a woman, or a simple ring repaired after breaking. These objects cannot tell us exactly what the owner thought. They can show that she handled tools, controlled access, valued an ornament, or kept it long enough to mend. The evidence is modest, but modest evidence suits lives built from repeated acts. Even famous documents can become more revealing when read from the edges. An estate account written to measure profit may record wages paid to women for harvesting. A guild rule intended to exclude them proves that they were present in numbers worth regulating. A sermon demanding female silence reveals that women were speaking. A law against servants changing employers reveals that servants were leaving. Prohibition is often accidental evidence of behavior. This way of reading changes the question. Instead of asking whether medieval women had power, we ask what kind of power, in which setting, over whom, and at what cost. A wealthy widow could command workers while remaining vulnerable to a royal official. A market seller could control cash but not sit on the town council. An abbess could govern an estate while answering to male church authorities. A wife could manage every household resource, yet struggle to defend herself against violence. Power was divided, conditional, and rarely complete. The same is true today, which may be why the medieval record feels unexpectedly familiar. People can be essential without being honored, skilled without being formally qualified, and responsible without controlling the institutions that depend on them. Medieval women did not solve this contradiction. They lived inside it, negotiated it, and left enough traces for us to recognize the pattern. Their history also warns us against confusing visibility with value. The person whose name fills a charter may not be the person whose labor made the charter's wealth possible. A lord owned the estate. Tenants cultivated it. Women processed its food, raised its labor force, produced its cloth, and sustained its households. Ownership generated documents. Maintenance generated tomorrow. That distinction returns us to the quiet house at night. Nothing there looks like political power. A covered pot, a locked chest, dry fuel, repaired clothing, and sleeping children would not impress a chronicler. Yet each object represents a decision made correctly enough for life to continue. History often celebrates the moment a city is captured. It rarely records the thousands of evenings when a household was not lost. And if you still believe you could handle her world easily, begin tomorrow before sunrise. Carry every drop of water you use. Prepare food without a store. Repair what breaks. Remember every obligation without a screen. Care for everyone who depends on you. Then repeat it through winter, while the law values your work less than the household does. By evening, you may understand that the challenge was never a contest between modern men and medieval women. It was the distance between a life supported by invisible systems and a life in which those systems had to be built by hand each day. She knew how to build them because she had no choice. The least history can do is finally notice who kept them standing.